The woods held a siren's call, a promise of solitude, a refuge from the cacophony of life. For Mark it was an irresistible allure, an escape from the city's clamor, the incessant demands of a world that never slept. He craved the quiet embrace of nature, the symphony of silence that only the wilderness could offer. Little did he know, silence held its own horrors. The cabin stood nestled among towering pines, a lone sentinel in a sea of green. Weather-beaten and worn, it whispered tales of seasons past, of solitary lives lived within its rough-hewn walls. It was a sanctuary for Mark, a place where he could shed the weight of the world and simply exist. Days were spent in quiet contemplation, nights surrendered to the symphony of crackling fire and rustling leaves. It began subtly, a fleeting dissonance in the symphony of the night. A high-pitched screech, thin and reedy like nails scraping across a chalkboard. It sliced through the stillness, sending a shiver down Mark's spine. He paused, breath held, listening intently. Silence returned, heavy and absolute. He dismissed it as a nocturnal bird, its eerie call lost to the vastness of the forest. A trick of the wind, perhaps, playing on his city-sensitized ears. Mark had always been a city dweller, accustomed to the constant hum of urban life. The forest, with its profound quiet and enigmatic sounds, was both a refuge and a mystery to him. He had come here seeking solace, a break from the relentless pace of the city. But tonight, the forest felt different, almost alive with an unseen presence. The screech had unsettled him, but he tried to shake it off, attributing it to his overactive imagination. He continued walking, the path barely visible under the canopy of ancient trees. Each step seemed to echo in the vast emptiness, amplifying his sense of isolation. The moonlight cast eerie shadows, transforming the familiar trail into a labyrinth of dark shapes and shifting forms. Mark's mind raced, conjuring images of lurking predators and unseen watchers. He reminded himself of the forest's beauty, its tranquility, and the reason he had come here in the first place. Just as he began to relax, another sound pierced the night. This time it was a low, guttural growl resonating from deep within the forest. Mark's heart pounded in his chest, the primal fear of the unknown gripping him. He stopped, straining to hear more. But the growl faded into the oppressive silence. Was it an animal, or something else entirely? The forest, once a sanctuary, now felt like a living entity, watching and waiting. He fumbled for his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness, revealing nothing but trees and underbrush. The sense of being watched intensified, every rustle and creak magnified in his mind. Mark knew he had to keep moving, to find his way back to the cabin before his fear overwhelmed him. The forest, with its secrets and shadows, had become a place of unease, a stark contrast to the peaceful retreat he had envisioned. As he quickened his pace, the sounds of the forest seemed to close in around him. The once soothing symphony of nocturnal creatures now felt like a cacophony of hidden threats. Mark's breath came in short, sharp bursts, his pulse racing. He had to remind himself to stay calm, to trust his instincts. The cabin wasn't far, just a little further. But with each step, the forest seemed to grow darker, more oppressive, as if it were trying to keep him within its grasp. Finally, through the dense foliage, he saw the faint glow of the cabin's light. Relief washed over him, but the sense of unease lingered. The forest had shown him a glimpse of its darker side, a reminder that nature, in all its beauty, could also be unpredictable and wild. As he reached the safety of the cabin, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that the forest had more secrets to reveal, and that this was just the beginning of his journey into the unknown. The screech returned, more insistent now, a jarring counterpoint to the rhythmic chirping of crickets. It seemed to emanate from the woods, echoing all around him, yet impossible to pinpoint. Mark's initial annoyance gave way to a prickle of unease. He tried to ignore it, to lose himself in the pages of his book, but the sound, like a persistent itch, wormed its way into his consciousness, refusing to be ignored. Section 5. A Descent into Obsession. Days bled into nights, the screeching a constant, unwelcome companion. It became an obsession, a maddening puzzle that consumed his every thought. Sleep offered no escape. The sound invaded his dreams, twisting them into nightmares of shadowy figures and unseen terrors. Mark became a prisoner in his own sanctuary, the walls seemingly closing in with each ear-splitting cry. Section 6. Echoes in the Silence. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Mark ventured into the woods. He searched for the source of the sound, combing through the undergrowth, his senses on high alert. But the forest held its secrets close. Each rustle of leaves, each snap of a twig sent his heart racing, but the screech remained elusive. An echo in the silence, mocking his every attempt to locate its origin. Mark's journey into the forest was not just a physical one, but a mental and emotional quest as well. The darkness enveloped him, the towering trees casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to dance with every flicker of his flashlight. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a reminder of the forest's ancient and untamed nature. As he moved deeper into the woods, the sounds of civilization faded away, replaced by the symphony of nocturnal creatures. Every step Mark took was measured and cautious. He knew that one wrong move could lead him astray or worse, into danger. The forest was a labyrinth, its paths winding and unpredictable. The moonlight barely penetrated the dense canopy, casting an otherworldly glow on the forest floor. Mark's mind raced with thoughts of what could be making the mysterious sound. Was it an animal in distress? A supernatural entity? Or perhaps something even more sinister? His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in the silence. The forest seemed to be alive, watching him, waiting for him to make a mistake. Mark's determination grew with each passing moment. He couldn't turn back now, not when he was so close to uncovering the truth. The screech, though elusive, was a beacon, guiding him deeper into the heart of the forest. As he pressed on, Mark's senses became sharper. He could hear the faintest rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the soft whisper of the wind through the trees. Every sound was amplified in the stillness, creating a cacophony that both unnerved and intrigued him. The forest was a living entity, and Mark was an intruder in its domain. Despite the fear that gnawed at him, Mark felt a strange sense of exhilaration. The unknown beckoned him, and he was determined to face it head-on. The echoes in the silence were not just a mystery to be solved, but a challenge to be conquered. And Mark was ready to meet that challenge, no matter what it took. Section 7. The walls close in. The isolation that had once been a comfort now felt like a suffocating blanket. The silence between the screeches became unbearable, pregnant with unseen menace. Shadows seemed to writhe in the corners of his vision, taking on sinister shapes. His mind, starved for sleep and plagued by the incessant noise, began to unravel. One night, in the depths of his despair, a chilling realization washed over Mark. The sound wasn't coming from the woods, it was coming from inside the cabin, from within the walls themselves. He pressed his ear against the rough wood, his heart pounding against his ribs. The screeching intensified, vibrating through his skull, a physical manifestation of his unraveling sanity. He tore at the walls, ripping away the wooden planks, desperate to silence the torment within. But there was nothing. No bird, no creature, no logical explanation for the torment that had consumed him. Only the hollow echo of his own madness reverberating back at him. Mark sank to the floor, defeated, his sanity shattered beyond repair. The screeching filled his world, a constant, unbearable symphony of his own fractured mind. He no longer sought escape, no longer sought answers. He surrendered to the madness, his laughter echoing through the ravaged cabin, a chilling counterpoint to the relentless screech that had become his reality. The forest reclaimed the cabin, its embrace now cold and unforgiving. Was it the isolation that had driven Mark mad, or had something sinister lured him to that desolate place? The answer, lost in the echoing silence of the woods, was a chilling whisper on the wind, A reminder that some invitations are best left unanswered, some silences best left undisturbed. For within the quiet spaces between the beats of our rational minds, sometimes madness listens. The cabin had once been a place of refuge, a sanctuary from the chaos of the world. Mark had sought solace in its wooden walls, hoping to find peace in the heart of nature. But the forest had other plans. It crept closer with each passing day, its tendrils of ivy and moss wrapping around the structure like a predator ensnaring its prey. The windows, once clear and inviting, were now clouded with grime, obscuring the view of the outside world. The door, which had welcomed Mark with a creak of familiarity, now groaned under the weight of the forest's relentless grip. Mark's descent into madness was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. He would sit by the fireplace, staring into the flames, lost in thought. The crackling of the wood was a comforting sound, a reminder of the life he had left behind. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the forest's whispers grew louder. They spoke of secrets buried deep within the earth, of shadows that danced just beyond the edge of the firelight. Mark tried to ignore them, to convince himself that they were nothing more than the product of an overactive imagination. But the forest was patient. It waited, biding its time, until Mark could no longer distinguish between reality and the phantoms that haunted his dreams. One night, as the wind howled through the trees, and the moon cast an eerie glow over the landscape, Mark heard it, a screech, piercing and unrelenting, echoing through the forest. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a cry of anguish that sent shivers down his spine. He stumbled out of the cabin, desperate to find the source of the noise. But the forest was a labyrinth, its paths twisting and turning, leading him deeper into its heart. The screech grew louder, more insistent, until it was all he could hear, and then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The silence that followed was deafening, a void that swallowed all sound. Mark fell to his knees, his mind teetering on the edge of sanity. The forest had claimed him, just as it had claimed the cabin, and in the quiet spaces between the beats of his rational mind,